You mentioned that not everyone made it. Obviously, some people died, but also the psychological
That's
aspect
right.
of not making it. So, in terms of employees, this idea of there's crises and there's crises, right? And I think what's interesting is when you have a crisis that's truly a crisis, it probably puts a lot of the other ones that people say are crises into perspective.
No doubt.
But for this one, for the employees, trying to return to the day-to-day operation, trying to get back to normal, trying to whatever that normal might be.
New normal.
That's right.
And you mentioned a great analogy with the veterans returning.
That's
So
right.
some people could do it, make the transition, right? And
Yes.
others probably said, I can't take this anymore.
That's right.
So talk a little about how that played out for Entergy and then also in corporate cultures in general.
It was and still is for me heartbreaking, because when I told the team early on, not everybody's going to make it through, I was thinking about it through the lens of, I know this is tough, and I don't have an expectation that everybody's going to want to take this journey that I knew we were about to go on. But adversity, brings out the best and worst in people. And the best that we could do to satisfy our ethical obligation to the employees who entrusted us with their lives and put themselves at risk was to provide help. But for the hundreds of employees and ultimately thousands of employees, everybody came to that crisis with a different set of bricks in their wheelbarrow, depending upon their personal circumstances. And none of us could know or predict the tipping point. And I think we were able to discharge our duty by recognizing in advance that people were going to need help, both during and after, provide the best support that we could. But for some, it was just too much. And again, 10 years provides perspective. And I can tell you the toughest part for me, even as a leader, because I was part of a team of people, some of whom were above me, who was my halo, if you will. There was a part of me that wondered if I would make it through, because the adrenaline of the moment carried me and allowed me to maintain this objectivity that was my coping mechanism. To the point we made earlier, I knew that they couldn't see me come unraveled, and so I was trying to hold on to the rope. I never worried about my family. My family was out of harm's way. But my family, if they were sitting here with us, Joe, my wife would tell you that she wondered whether she had lost me to PTSD.
Right.
Because when I came down from, I literally was in command mode for months, and they were away from me. But when I came down from the immediacy of the life-threatening, society-threatening aspect of Katrina, and we began to put the building blocks of a return to the new normal, they weren't sure whether I could come out of it.
A long time to decompress from
No
that.
question.
Yeah.
No question about it. And so, we can talk from the position of leadership, but trust me, not even leaders are immune from the uncertainties of managing through prolonged stress. It took its toll, and I can now talk to you about the significance of maintaining a North Star.
Right.
And for me, that North Star was obviously faith in family, but it was also that higher calling that kept me grounded. But there were employees for whom this was
Too much.
This was too much.
Joe, is that what you found in your research, that this is consistent across companies and cultures?
One of the traits that Rod just eloquently touched on that's really critical for leaders in general, and especially in crises, is humility. Nowadays, humility is a concept that's undergone a change in meaning over the centuries. Nowadays, when we say somebody's humble, we think they mean they have an acute awareness of their shortcomings, limitations. Oh no, I'm not this, I'm not that. The original meaning is from the same Latin root as humus, the earth, and it's being in touch with reality. So it's kind of, it's knowing your shortcomings, limitations, but it's also knowing your strengths. And I think leadership requires both, because if you don't know your strengths, then you won't have the confidence that you need to inspire trust in others. But if you don't know shortcomings, limitations, like recognition, I wasn't sure I would make it.
Right.
You know, then you don't appear quite as human as
right.
people, and then you don't recognize the extent to which you need other people. And that's other
That's
people
right.
in your team, but it's also, you mentioned the importance of your faith
Yeah.
and your family. So, you know, God and your family.
Whatever
and
that rope is that you're holding
whatever
on
it
to.
is,
Yeah.
you know, what you are going to need to do to take care of yourself.
right.
Because that's something you do for yourself, but you do it for the people you lead, you do it for your family, and you do it for the communities that you and your team all serve as well. But if you lack humility, you don't do that, and then I think you're less likely to make it.
Interestingly enough, during the literal dark days, and this was when communication was beginning to fade, because at the time, 10 years ago, we were just discovering text messages or BlackBerry pens.
Right.
But it was the Notre Dame community. It was Chuck Lennon, the Alumni Association, it was Coach Holtz and some of my teammates who were fighting valiantly to find out how I was doing and to offer their help and support. That was an affirmation for me of the lessons that I'd learned on this campus as a student and as an athlete. And I will tell you, I've told the story many times about how affirming it was for me being a part of this place where that ethos, that ethic that was grounded in sort of God, country, Notre Dame. You know, we see it as a tagline, but in the darkest of the dark days, when I wasn't too sure how the day was going to play out, it was very affirming for me to know that there were people who were looking out for me, who were caring for me, where they were part of the rope that I held on to when I wasn't too sure about. There was no false bravado. All of that had been stripped, and any man or woman would have been tested in this environment. And so my sense of humility is overtaken only by my sense of gratitude that I did come out of it. Because I'm here standing because of the people who were supportive of me throughout, not solely because of anything great I did as a leader. I was thrust into that environment, and I thank God that I had exhibited enough to give those folks who I depended upon some faith that they could trust me, knowing I cared and that I was committed to them and to getting this job done.
Yeah.
Or, oh, go ahead,
Well, something that Rod touched on, a sense of, you know, the Notre Dame family, community kind of coming there, touches on, I think, a really important ideal. One of the principles of Catholic social teaching is solidarity. And solidarity is a sense of being part of one human family and kind of, you know, caring about each other. And, you know, what do you learn, how do you learn what that means? Most of us learn it at home, and then you learn it in a place like this. We have a community that kind of goes beyond home, where people really do kind of come together and support each other, and even years later. I think the challenge for leaders and for all of us is, how do you extend that?
That's right.
Beyond Notre Dame? How do you extend it to all of New Orleans? How do you extend it to all of the United States, where people genuinely feel that they belong?
The universal character of our faith. How do you manifest the universality of the church?
I mean, the Christians, you pray the Our Father, and I sometimes, when I'm praying that, find myself saying, can I really pray that if I don't think of other people as my brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
You know, because to the extent I don't, then
That's right.
it's not my Father, it's our Father. So
That's
how do
right.
you kind of,
That's
how do
right.
you extend that that you've experienced here, kind of that broader kind of
First by
community?
example.